Stepping away from our usual charts and data to unpack something far, far more sinister. We're going to examine a true, documented supernatural encounter, but one that's deeply intertwined with a horrific historical tragedy. So, let's dive into this. But I have to warn you right up front, this isn't just your standard ghost story. It's a really dark case study of what happens when the most terrifying chapters of our history absolutely refuse to stay buried.
Picture this, okay? You wake up in the dead of night. Your lungs are completely burning. You can't breathe. There's this massive, crushing weight on your throat. And right beside your ear, you hear a bruised, bloody face whispering, "Janaya, Janaya, Janaya," which translates to, "It's me, it's me, it's me." Now, this wasn't a scene from a horror movie. This was the terrifying, waking reality for Lian. He was a Korean-Indonesian university student, and his late-night study sessions literally turned into a desperate fight for his own life.
Section 1. The Legend of Han Miso. To really understand why this was happening to Lian, we have to look at the literal ground he was standing on. He was at a prominent college in South Korea, which we're just going to call Universities K. And beneath this university's shiny, modern foundations lies a profoundly dark history. Back in the 1920s, all the way through World War II, this exact location was a Japanese military barracks. During this era, countless young women were tragically kidnapped and forced into sexual slavery. It's a horrific historical reality known as the Jugan Ianfu, or comfort women. And the modern university campus? It was built directly over this site of unimaginable historical suffering. Now, as you might expect, this history gave birth to a very terrifying local legend. They call her the Hayan Yuryang, or the White Ghost. According to the campus lore, she's the vengeful spirit of a beautiful young woman named Han Miso. Han Miso was brought to those very barracks, but she fought back. She rebelled relentlessly against her captors, always trying to escape, until one day she was brutally beaten to death for her defiance. Her tormented spirit is set to still wander the campus grounds today, eternally trapped in the white traditional Hanbok she was wearing when she died. So, Lian had heard the rumors, obviously, but in late 2019, those rumors started bleeding into his actual reality. It started off pretty subtle, the sudden, unnatural croaking of crows right outside his dorm window. Then he had this strange, sad dream of a woman in a white hanbok weeping under a tree. But the most chilling early disturbance? Hearing a woman sobbing violently from inside a locked, entirely empty stall in the men's restroom. Lian actually knocked to tell her she was in the wrong bathroom, and a disembodied voice apologized to him. When he checked a few minutes later, the stall door was wide open and completely empty. No one was there.
Section 2. The Ouija board mistake.
Up to this point, the activity was just eerie. Unsettling, for sure, but it was mostly passive. But Lian and his friends were about to cross a massive line, going from mere observers to active participants. It was winter 2019. The campus was largely deserted for the holidays, but Lian and a few friends decided to stay behind in their all-boys dormitory. Naturally, boredom sets in, and one of his friends, Gunwoo, brings out a new purchase, a Ouija board. Yup. They literally decided to play a paranormal game right on cursed historical grounds. Well, the seance escalated incredibly quickly. First, they ask, "Are you the White Ghost?" Silence. Nothing happens. They ask again. Still silence. Frustrated, one of Lian's friends just totally loses his patience and actually insults the unseen entity. He literally calls it a stupid ghost. Instantly, the candle in the center of the room just dies. It wasn't blown out by a draft, the flame just vanishes, pitch blackness. And a split second later, a heavy book is violently hurled all the way across the room, smashing into the wall. The boys scattered in absolute terror. But you see, the damage was already done. They had opened a door. That exact night, Lian went to sleep, and the spirit fully answered their call. Remember, Lian's first dream had been melancholic, right? A weeping woman under a tree. But this second dream, immediately following that Ouija board incident, was a visceral, violent nightmare. The woman appeared right in front of his face. Her face was brutally bruised and battered. Her mouth dripped with dark blood. Her right eye was bulging unnaturally, and her entire body was covered in whip marks. She lunged at him, wrapping her freezing cold hands incredibly tight around his throat, whispering, "Janaya, it's me." Lian jolted awake screaming, just desperately gasping for air. His head was pounding, his neck was literally burning. He rushes to the bathroom sink, splashes cold water on his face, and finally looks up in the mirror. And there it was. One real, physical, red choke mark seared directly into the flesh of his neck. This wasn't just a bad dream anymore, guys. She had physically touched him. Section 3. Visions and False Security. So the haunting has now fully escalated to physical violence, and this supernatural grip on Lian only tightened, starting to feed him horrific glimpses of the past. He was forced to witness a truly harrowing vision in his sleep. He found himself standing right there in the 1920s military barracks. He watched the beautiful woman in the white Hanbok desperately running from soldiers in the dark. He saw her get shot in the left leg as she stumbled. He watched, completely paralyzed and screaming for them to stop, as she was stripped, hung from an iron pole, and tortured to death. He was forced to witness the exact tragic genesis of the Haiyan Yuryang. He was trapped in this relentless cycle of terror until something massive and unexpected intervened. The year 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic struck, plunging the whole world into chaos. The university completely shut down, and Lian immediately fled back home to Indonesia. And honestly, it was like magic. As soon as he left Korean soil, the hauntings just completely vanished. 2 whole years of silence followed. Lian finished his degree online from his home in Indonesia. He slept peacefully every night. The red mark on his neck completely faded. He and his friends had totally convinced themselves that the nightmare was tied strictly to the soil of Universitas K. They genuinely believed the distance had saved them, but unfortunately, they were dangerously wrong. Section 4. She followed him home. Okay, so it's 2022. The pandemic restrictions have finally lifted. Lian returns to South Korea, but he doesn't go to the campus. He goes to visit his grandmother in the city of Daejeon, which is miles and miles away from the university. It's 10 p.m. Lian is taking a late-night shower. His eyes are squeezed shut, his hair is thick with shampoo foam, and suddenly, the heavy rush of water just completely cuts out. Dead silence in the bathroom. Now, I want you to really think about how incredibly vulnerable you are in that exact moment. You're blinded by soap, standing completely exposed in the quiet dampness of a bathroom. Lian slowly, very cautiously, tilts his head back to inspect the showerhead. He opens his stinging eyes and looks up at the ceiling. And there she was. The absolutely terrifying truth hit him instantly. She followed him home. Clinging directly to the ceiling above him was the woman in the white hanbok, but her body was bent backward in this unnatural, sickening bridge pose. Her bruised, battered face hung upside down, staring right dead into his eyes. Her mouth was stretched incredibly wide open, and thick, dark blood was dripping from her jaws directly onto Lian's face and chest. He hadn't escaped her at all. She had just been waiting for him to come back to Korea. Section 5. Putting the spirit to rest. Lian bolted out of that bathroom, screaming at the top of his lungs. He realized right then and there that this was no longer just a haunting tied to a building. It was an attachment. His life and the lives of all his friends who played that game were in immediate, physical danger. So it was a desperate race against time. The boys managed to track down a local shaman, a wise elder they called Grandpa Boyong, and he delivered a terrifying diagnosis. By using that Ouija board, the boys had acted as a beacon. They didn't just contact the Han Yuryang. They accidentally anchored her most powerful, furious energy directly to themselves. That board was the tether. The shaman gave them incredibly strict, procedural instructions to sever this deadly tie before it was too late. First, they had to burn the Ouija board immediately, definitely before sunrise. Next, they couldn't just toss the ashes in the trash. They had to respectfully store them in a formal cremation urn and actually place it in a funeral home. Finally, they each had to undergo an intense religious cleansing based on their own personal faiths, whether that was at a mosque, a church, or a temple, just to wash the residual spiritual energy off their bodies. And you better believe they executed this entire plan that very same night. And that night, Lian had one final dream, but this time, It was different. The blood was gone. The dark bruises were completely gone. Han Miso stood before him, totally whole and peaceful. She bowed gently, smiled, and spoke just one phrase. Kamsahamnida, Lian. Thank you, Lian. And then she just faded away. The terror of Universitas K was finally over. But it leaves us with a really haunting question to ponder tonight. When we tread on grounds that are soaked in historical tragedy, are we ever truly walking alone? Or are we just one wrong move away from waking the echoes of the past? Good night, everyone. Keep your lights on.